The earthquake did not end when the shaking stopped. 6 days after a 7.8 magnitude quake tore through the southern Philippines, the ground under Mindanao has shaken more than 2,000 times. The death toll has climbed to 45. The injured count has passed 500. And in General Santos, rescue teams are still pulling people from the same buildings that came down on the first morning, because the aftershocks that keep hitting are not letting them finish. This is not the aftermath of a disaster. This is still the disaster. When the original 7.8 hit on the morning of June 8th, it was already the strongest earthquake to strike the Philippines this year. Wire agencies called it the most powerful to hit the country since the 1976 Moro Gulf catastrophe. Buildings folded in General Santos. A mountainside collapsed and buried homes in the town of Glan. A tsunami pushed into the coast, and the ground immediately started shaking again. In the first 24 hours alone, more than 300 aftershocks followed. By the end of day 3, the count had passed 1,000. By the end of day 6, it had crossed 2,000. None of the aftershocks approached the magnitude of the main event. The largest measured 6.5, powerful enough on its own to collapse a weakened structure, powerful enough to send rescue teams stepping back from the rubble they were climbing through, waiting for the shaking to stop before climbing back in. That has been the rhythm of the recovery since Monday morning. Wait, Thaikin. But here is the detail that tells the real story. The 2,000 aftershock number is not just a count. It is a description of what the rescuers in General Santos have been working inside. Every time a crew moves into a collapsed building, they're doing it with the knowledge that the structure has already been compromised by the main shock, has been shaken again by a 6.5, and has been rattled more than 2,000 additional times since. What holds on day 1 may not hold on day 6, and the team's going to know that. The 4-story commercial building that came down on June 8th is still being worked. Scanners were brought in during the first 48 hours and detected no additional signs of life beyond the survivors already pulled out. The team have kept going anyway, because until the building is fully cleared, nobody can say with certainty that it is empty. Across the city, the count of damaged structures has grown as engineers complete their inspections. The original figures, roughly 2,000 homes and 117 government buildings damaged, were always an undercount. They were the numbers available before anyone had looked at everything. The real figure is higher. Engineers are still working through it. Here is what the aftershock sequence is actually telling us. When a major earthquake ruptures a fault, the rock that broke does not immediately settle. The surrounding crust adjusts. Stress redistributes. Smaller fractures open up along the edges of the main rupture zone. Those fractures are the aftershocks, and the pattern they follow is well documented. It is called the Amori Law. The frequency of aftershocks decays over time, but it decays slowly. A 7.8 magnitude event produces a long tail. Weeks, sometimes months, occasionally longer. For the people sleeping in tents and vacant lots across General Santos right now, that is not a geological footnote. That is the forecast. The 6.5 aftershock that hit on day 1 was large enough to be classified as a significant earthquake on its own. In a city that had not just been shaken by a 7.8, it would have made international news. In a city that it was simply the largest of the first wave. There is no guarantee the sequence is finished producing events of that size. Now widen the frame, because the numbers in General Santos are only part of what this event has left behind. Across Sarangani province and the surrounding region, 6,000 school buildings were evacuated and sealed after the main shock. Engineers have been moving through them one by one, checking structural integrity before they can be reopened. As of the latest available count, only a fraction have been cleared. The rest remain closed. The children who stood in those courtyards on the first morning of school have not been back inside since. The airport in General Santos, closed immediately after the quake, has partially reopened for relief operations. But commercial flights remain limited, and the logistics of moving supplies into the affected region are still strained. The coast that the tsunami touched on June 8th is still under observation. The 1-meter wave that came ashore caused damage to fishing boats and low-lying structures. The fishing communities that depend on those boats are out of work while the damage is assessed and repaired. For families that were already living close to the margin, the loss of a single fishing boat is not a minor inconvenience. It is the loss of the income that feeds the household. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has said the national government will not leave Mindanao behind. That commitment is now being measured against the scale of what the region actually needs. Temporary shelter for thousands of displaced families. Structural assessment of tens of thousands of buildings. Medical care for more than 500 injured, some of whom sustained serious injuries in the collapses. Psychological support for communities that have been shaken more than 2,000 times in 6 days and have no way of knowing when the shaking will stop. PHIVOLCS, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, has continued issuing advisories as the aftershock sequence develops. Their message has been consistent. The activity is expected to continue. The public should remain alert. Damaged structures should not be re-entered until cleared by engineers. The word they keep using is continue. Here is the question the recovery is now running into. The buildings that survived the June 8th main shock survived a 7.8 magnitude earthquake. Some of them did so without any visible damage. Others survived with cracks, with shifted foundations, with compromised walls that are still standing but are no longer the structures they were. The problem is that from the outside, a cracked foundation and an intact one can look identical. And a structure that survived the first shock may not survive the 5th aftershock, or the 50th, or the 2000th. That is not speculation. It is what structural engineers call accumulated damage. Each shaking event puts additional stress on connections that were weakened by the one before. The building does not fail all at once. It fails incrementally, quietly, over a sequence of events, until the event that finally takes it down. The people who went back to their homes after the main shock and found them standing are now living through that sequence. Every aftershock is a question, and so far, 2,000 questions have been asked. The Cotabato Trench, the fault system that ruptured on June 8th, has not moved back to where it was before. It cannot. The rock that broke has broken. The plates have shifted to their new positions. The strain that had been accumulating for decades along that specific section of the fault has been released. But the trench does not end at the rupture zone. It extends further, and the sections that did not break on June 8th are still locked, still bending, still storing strain. The 1976 Morro Gulf earthquake broke a different section of the same system. The 2026 earthquake broke another. The sections in between and the sections beyond are still intact. No one can tell you when the next section moves. No one can tell you how large the next event will be. The only thing the record makes clear is that this fault has ruptured before, has ruptured again, and will rupture again after that. General Santos is a city of 720,000 people built on a coastline with no realistic tsunami warning window. The buildings that are standing today are the buildings that will face the next event. The people sleeping in tents tonight are the people who will be there when it comes. The aftershocks are still arriving. The engineers are still counting. The rescuers are still going in. And the fault that started all of this is still exactly where it has always been. It is not finished.